It's nice to see a mix of people here. My name's Kate and I am the project coordinator at Bradford Schools and Colleges of Sanctuary. We will specifically be speaking about schools today. My background is I was a primary school teacher for many years and taught a lot of children who were new to English and EAL, English as Additional Language. And then lived abroad actually for a while, working on teacher training products and projects. And then when I came back to Bradford, just was really passionate about supporting new arrivals in our schools here, which I knew well. And then this job occurred for City of Sanctuary, and it was perfect really. And so this is well, I'll go on to just tell you what we're about. I can see some of you have had training about Schools of City of Sanctuary already, so hopefully you know a little bit about what we do. I can't move the screen forward. There we go. Okay, great. So City of Sanctuary is a UK charity and it's a UK-wide movement about welcome and belonging. With the vision that the UK will be a place of welcome for all and committed to justice and solidarity for people seeking sanctuary. So across the UK, there are lots of community groups. There's Bradford City of Sanctuary, there's Leeds City of Sanctuary. And then within that, there's lots of kind of sector groups. So there's local authorities of sanctuary, there's libraries of sanctuary, there's universities of sanctuary, there's schools and colleges of sanctuary. And all of these places have gone through this accreditation process to kind of sharpen up what they do to be this place of welcome for all, but particularly for people seeking sanctuary. So I'm sorry about the number of words on this screen, but I just thought the wording was really important for anyone that doesn't know exactly what Schools of Sanctuary is. So Schools of Sanctuary is a growing network of more than 1,100 primary and secondary schools, nurseries and sixth forms, all committed to creating a culture of welcome, understanding and belonging for those forced to flee. Driven by teachers, school staff, parents and governors and community groups. The network supports the thousands of children and young people seeking sanctuary in the UK, raises awareness of the experiences of people seeking safety, and plays a key role in building a culture of kindness and compassion. And because schools are at the heart of our communities, we think they're really central to building a better, fairer and kinder society for everyone. Now, you may have seen the language we use there, seeking sanctuary. Use that language rather than refugees and asylum seekers. In some of the stats and definitions we'll be talking about, I will be using the term refugee and asylum seeker, but we think it's more humanizing to talk about people seeking sanctuary rather than sticking on this generic label of refugee, which is quite a loaded word, particularly at the moment. As we go through, please do, I'm not sure present actually, because my little box is tiny, but if there are any burning questions, we will have discussion times, but if there are any burning questions, please pop your hand up or pop anything in the chat. So there we go. So the goal of today, and this is very similar to the training I do in schools. In fact, it actually is the training we do in the schools that we work with here in Bradford. And the aim is really to give you an intro into what Schools of Sanctuary is. So hopefully you can understand kind of how we work and what we do. Give you some stats. So the person that said they liked stats will be happy, and some definitions, and just a bit of international perspective about forced migration. Like, why do we see the children in front of us in our classrooms? But because of what's happening internationally and then nationally and then here in Bradford. How do they get here and why? And the role of schools, and we're obviously very passionate about this. And then what it would look like to become a school of sanctuary, how you can get involved, what resources are out there, and how we can build our network to be even stronger across the UK, but specifically in Bradford at the moment. So first bit is Schools of Sanctuary, an introduction. We've touched on this a little bit already. But why are schools of sanctuary so important? And if you take away two things about who we are and what we do, these are the two things. So number one is to build a culture of welcome and compassion with young people at the forefront by raising awareness about forced displacement and migration. And migration right now is a very, very big topic in the media. You know, hostile narratives, misinformation, it's local elections today. Immigration is a huge part of that. And we just think it's so important that we equip our young people to navigate and talk about these headlines. And we do that in a variety of ways and encourage schools to do all sorts of things that I don't have sort of time to fully elaborate on. And that's where we can come on to in the resources section. But we really believe this is important, and we do see the ripple effect of schools that talk about these things going out into parents and the community. And then hopefully, you know, when a migrant child arrives in the school, their peers will be slightly more empathetic and understanding. There'll have been some learning there. So that's first point. Second point is to ensure education provision effectively supports and meets the new arrivals. So that's really looking at, oh gosh, like your induction, your new to English provision, your uniform provision, you know, are you getting translators? Are you speaking to parents? There's a huge amount of that. And actually, the delightful thing about my role is being able to go into so many schools in Bradford and seeing this done really well. So a lot of the award and working towards becoming a school of sanctuary is actually celebrating a lot of what schools are already doing, as well as kind of tightening up on other things to make it even better. So those are the two main things. Because I keep forgetting that the keyboard doesn't work. There we go. Because I always come back to this quote, and this is a picture of little Amal, who was a big puppet with Good Chance Theatre, who came to Bradford a few years ago, and she was supposed to represent the journey of a child from Syria, and she walked from Syria through Europe to Bradford. You may have seen her in City Park, but she visited one of our schools of sanctuary, Lilycroft Primary, who are there. And I always come back to this quote. About education and schools. And it's from the Bell Foundation, who wrote a really good publication a few years back. And it says, education not only provides refugee children with the hope and means to succeed, but also anchors a child whose life experience is often defined by chaos, fear, and isolation within a society, a school, a classroom where he or she can belong. And so often, you know, when it's done well, we see refugee children, children seeking sanctuary, and their families really thrive purely because of this support they're getting in school, which is amazing when it's done well. So I know we've not got all teachers here, but that almost doesn't matter because you can think about it hypothetically. Can you think of any refugee or asylum seeking children or pupils in your school? Or you can think of this hypothetically, or if you haven't got pupils seeking sanctuary, you can think of children, you know, that perhaps are new to English or migrant children. What challenges do you think they would face? And could you pop them in the chat? I'm going to see how I can see the chat from here. Let me just narrow this down. Or I've stopped sharing. That's okay. Could you pop them in the chat? What sort of things do you think they might face? Language, yep. Poverty, yep, that's a really big one. Yep, and so much comes with poverty. Culture, accessing resources and support, yep, access to services. Trauma, cultural differences, yep. Material deprivation, and that can be really socially stigmatizing. Bullying, yeah, sadly we see that a fair bit. Lack of belonging. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. I'm gonna open up the screen again. Hopefully you can see that. Please unmute and shout at me if you can't see that. Yeah, you've really got so many of them there. I mean, we see this time and time again in the schools that we work with. So language, I think that was mentioned, mental health, trauma. So many of these pupils carry huge amounts of trauma from often from their journeys and how they got here. Lack of specialist support. We know, having worked closely in, as a teacher myself, we know how stretched schools are and how resources seem to be tighter than ever. So, lack of specialist support, lack of awareness of needs, stereotyping, bullying, poverty, I think that was mentioned. And that can be everything from not being able to have the right uniform, but from things like, not having the money to do something with friends at the weekend is a huge, broad one, poverty. Transience is a huge one we see. So, a child will just get settled in year 8 at school after a lot of hard work from school, and then suddenly, the Home Office will move them to Hull and they'll have to start all over again. And that's traumatic for both school and the children. Yeah, that's really hard. Delays in accessing school. That can be hard, particularly in secondary school. I think places can be hard to find and getting children there. There's often a bit of a lag with that. Cultural barriers, we spoke about that. Food and dietary preferences actually end up being a really big one. And I have seen schools adapt whole school dinner menus sometimes when, yeah, children found that hard. So yeah, I think that was really, yeah, really helpful. Thank you for contributing to that. So practically, like, how does a school become a school of sanctuary? We have a very, for anyone that's seen it, elaborate audit tool with 12 criteria, and they all fit under these 3 aspects. So learn, embed, share. And I'm going to give a couple of examples rather than break it down into the micro sections that the audit tool is, but just so you get an idea as to what we're kind of looking for and what things you might be working on. So the whole premise of the School of Sanctuary Award and the School of Sanctuary process, which we say to schools, take an academic year, take 18 months to work on it. This needs to be meaningful. It needs to be sort of systemic change. It needs to not just be like an assembly during Refugee Week, tick, done. The whole point of it is for it to bring meaningful change to school. And I know that workload is high in schools and capacity is limited. So doing it well does take time and it takes planning. So curriculum, for example, I think I just said, it's more than an assembly. You're looking at, are you discussing forced migration across different subjects? That could be in one of your English units. There are so many great books out there, and we've got endless book lists about people seeking sanctuary, really good fiction or non-fiction. Are you looking at a story about that in year 9? Are you in year 10 looking at climate change and displacement in your geography? Are you doing something, you can cover these topics about diversity, about other cultures, about forced migration in so many creative ways. So it's about getting that into your curriculum so that it sort of repeats across school and it's not just an assembly that a child might miss one day. Having said that, we do have I do spend a lot of time signposting and gathering resources. So we've got Faraha down here, you can see, delivering an assembly. She's from Congo, she's lived in Bradford for 20 years, but was a refugee. And she delivers some of our assemblies and she delivers music. And then we've got a filmmaker who has made a film called The Sanctuary Seekers of Bradford. He goes into to deliver workshops with some of the cast. We've got schools that do all sorts of things, as well as staff training. And that's so much more than just on forced migration. It's about unconscious bias. It's about race awareness, so many different things. And the sharing good practice aspect is a really, sorry, my daughter's just trying to break in. She's in 6 and was under strict instructions not to come in. She's gone. And sharing good practice across schools in Bradford is also a really big aspect. And we run this communities of practice group. every term. It used to be half termly, but that was a bit much, where we bring together educators from all sorts of different schools across the district. And I capture often sort of the best ones, the highlights, that we make them into these videos, just because there's something really nice and really relevant about knowing what schools in your area are doing to support new to English students and pupils seeking sanctuary. So that's learn. Embed is about your policies and practices. So it's looking at everything from your new to English provision, to induction, to pupil voice, to ensuring that parents seeking sanctuary, pupils seeking sanctuary have a voice, to really practical things like help with uniforms, school meals, transport. There's a huge list, and I'm often astonished at what some schools do. ESOL classes for parents, onboarding an Afghan dad as a governor. One school did that recently, which was amazing. He became a real advocate for that community within the school. And we also have sort of social action things around welcome. You can see children from Atlas Primary on that picture there. And then share is about sort of sharing your messages of welcome. So we run loads of events every year for Refugee Week, and I will show you the flyer for that at the end. Big Days of Welcome, which is on June the 15th this year. No, maybe the 12th, June the 12th, Friday the 12th. Tons of resources out there if your school wants to do a day of welcome. It's the Friday before Refugee Week. I can show you the website, and there's lots of age-appropriate ideas and things you could do. So sharing your messaging, and that could be, having a page about Schools of Sanctuary on your website, getting involved in our annual art exhibition. You can see there's a lovely piece of artwork there from Westminster Primary, and we distribute during 100 pieces of children's artwork across 12 libraries in Bradford district, because Bradford Library Service is a library service of Sanctuary, and we work really closely with them. And these are some of our schools. Currently, we have 10 awarded schools. We have 7 working towards the award. We have 5 renewing their award, because you do it every 3 years. And then I have about 63 in my network, so who receive all the emails, all the newsletters, all the opportunities, the events, the CPD, all of those things. And we have an annual celebration. We do it in collaboration with the Access team at Bradford Council, to celebrate not only schools who've got the award, but parents, pupils, all sorts of different kind of awards for achievement and attendance, and excellent practice. So before I move on to our next section about forced migration and check the clock, goodness, doesn't time fly? Does anybody have any questions about Schools of Sanctuary at this point? I can see, I can see nobody's camera, but I can probably hear your voice. Any questions at this point? We will get a bit more interactive in the next session, and there's a quiz coming up, so I hope you're ready for that. Okay, let's move on. So part of the learn section for staff I work with in schools is learning about forced migration. Like, it's compulsory that all staff have an idea if they're working towards the award. So this is some of the stuff we do with them. So just have a look at these images and have a look at these questions. Who is a migrant? What does forcibly displaced mean? Who is a refugee? And who is an asylum seeker? Would you feel confident answering any of those? And because I don't want to turn off my sharing screen and I can't see the chat without turning that off, if anybody feels brave enough to give a definition of any of those by popping their camera and unmuting themselves, you'd be very welcome and receive invisible points for doing it.
I'll keep an eye on the chat, Kate, because I think there's a couple of people typing. So
okay, great.
Yeah, I'll read those out when they come
up. If you could just read them out, that would be wonderful. Yeah. Thank you.
So Sarah has written, refugee is escaping war or danger.
Yep.
Invisible points for that?
Yep, invisible points. Not invisible, but just they don't earn you anything other than a pat on the back.
Shane has said a migrant is someone who chooses to leave.
Okay, yeah, nice. don't worry. If those are really good answers. If there's any more typing, you can let me know.
Yeah, there is
Okay.
somebody. Forcibly displaced, I'm thinking, is like places of war and conflict.
Yeah. Someone who's been forced. Yeah, cool. They're really, it's really helpful to think about these questions because so many of these words have become so loaded and often, you know, misused in our media. For example, you know, an illegal asylum seeker, you can't have an, it's not illegal to seek asylum. So understanding, especially if we're teaching about this in school, what these words mean are really important. And, you know, the images are around the screen because, you know, Mo Farah, he was a refugee. Rita Ora, she was a refugee. What do these words make you think of? So often these days, the word refugee makes you think of the small boat in the top left-hand corner there. And yeah, that is them too. But I was in Calais back in October with some of these people trying to cross, and there was a board in one of the camps in Calais with a list of everybody's professions. And we had doctors, we had vets, we had dentists, you know, that was people's primary identity before being labeled this word, refugee. So terminology and wording is really important. But if we were to look at these definitions, a migrant, I think somebody alluded to this, there's no formal legal definition, but in general, someone who chooses to leave their country, you know, for education or for family reasons, for work, it's quite a loose term. A forcibly displaced person is it's a really broad category, and it means someone who's had to leave their home because of war, violence, persecution, disasters, or human rights abuses. But they may still remain inside their own country. For example, if you think about Ukraine, I think there's been 15 million people displaced, so forced from their home, but about 9 million have just moved. I say just, it's huge, but they've moved from east to West Ukraine. So they've not crossed the border, but they've been forced from their home. So yeah, the category includes refugees, internally displaced people, IDPs, asylum seekers, and some others needing protection. Now, if you were to go on to then oh, refugees, that is a person who has been forced to leave their country because of some of the reasons that we stated above, but they've crossed a border into another country. They're looking for refuge in another state. So it's not like so they are one of the forcibly displaced, but they've left their country. Whereas an asylum seeker can still be a refugee, but they've left their home country. So imagine you've left Syria, you arrive in the UK as a refugee, but you haven't yet been granted official legal refugee status. That's different to refugee, because you're waiting for a decision from the Home Office. And I'm sure many of you know that, and you could be waiting anywhere from 6 months to 10 years. There's a huge backlog right now of people waiting for their decision on their claim, and it's a very difficult time. And then internally displaced, we talked a bit about this. This is someone who's been forced to leave their home but relocated within their home country. And actually 60% of everybody displaced are an IDP. Rather than actually leaving their country. So
we did get a few more bits in the chat, Kate.
Oh yeah.
So somebody put about forcibly displaced, potentially being trafficked.
Yeah.
And then forcibly displaced again, involuntary movement of individuals away from their homes. And Shane just wanted to add that above all, a human being.
A human being, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. And trafficking as a whole other issue, but yes, we find people claiming asylum here after they have been trafficked, which is just pretty horrific. We talked briefly about labels a minute ago, and I talked about who we met in Calais, and this was Azam from Syria. I never considered myself a refugee. I'm a human being, and Shane, this is exactly what you just touched on. I'm a human being who was forced to leave my country, and the word made little sense to me since it doesn't reflect anything about who I am, a brother, a husband, a doctor, or a million other things. And I put that in there because we are about to look at some stats, and I just think it's so easy to then think about numbers and forget the people like Azam, forget the kids, that we teach in our schools who are human beings and could just be like you and me. So yeah, that's important to remember. So a quiz for you. How many people worldwide are forcibly displaced? Let's pop it in the chat. How many people worldwide are forcibly displaced? We have 123 million, 46 million, or 500,000. Pop your answers in now. It's a bit like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And then perhaps, Noreen, you could sort of give us a summary of either what most people, the majority, is saying, or whether there's a complete split.
There's an equal split at the moment between 123 million and 46 million.
Okay.
Now we've got some one for 500,000 as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for participating. 123 million is the answer to that. And I'll show you some stats in a minute, but that has risen exponentially in the last 15 years. And we'll talk about that more in just a moment, because there's another question I want to ask you. That's how many people are displaced. That could be internally in their country. But, oh, sorry, I shouldn't say percentage. What number of those are refugees? So what number of that 123 million have actually crossed a border into another country? 20, 80, or 40 million? Pop your answers in the chat. So that's what number of those are refugees. So they've left their country.
Mostly, I think all the answers are 40 million.
Very good maths, everybody. I think, yes, well done. There was a stat about IDPs, I think, earlier on that, yes, that is right, 40 million. And of those, 40% are children, around 40%. So nearly half of those 40 million refugees are under 18s, which, yeah, I don't know if that's a surprising stat to you or not. If you do like graphs and data, this is a graph that just shows over the years. So you can see in 2010, it was around 40 million people who were forcibly displaced, and it has just risen sharply. I wonder if you could pop in the chat, what reasons do you think, why would more people be displaced now than before? Perhaps pop a few reasons in the chat.
Wars. Extreme weather.
Yeah.
Those are the two we've got.
Yeah, those are my two. So well done. Yeah, I mean, climate change has been the biggest driver for forced migration in the last sort of 5 to 10 years, particularly, droughts, flooding, and sadly, things aren't getting better on that front. So, and the global instability with wars as well. We've seen huge, conflicts in Sudan, internal conflicts in Congo. Obviously Israel-Palestine, but Afghanistan and Syria continue to be huge. So just to recap on some of the facts that came out of the quiz, I'll just briefly, I'm not going to read them out. You can just sort of skim over them. But yeah, it's interesting to think 41 million were displaced in 2010, and now it's 123, which has just skyrocketed due to some of those reasons. But I would say, yeah, weather shocks and conflict are the biggest. That number are internally displaced. Not everyone's leaving. Around 2/3 live, below the poverty line. And the majority, and this is really important, nearly 3/4 live in low or middle income countries. I think we tend to think that everybody makes the journey across to Europe, and some do, don't get me wrong. But if you look at this, 66% are hosted in neighboring countries. So if you're fleeing Syria, you're most likely to go to Lebanon because you don't have the means, you don't have the money, you don't have the capacity to travel all the way through Turkey and across Europe to the UK, particularly the UK, because we're surrounded by water, which makes it extra tricky. Okay, next quiz for you. 67% of refugees, so that's that 40 million, come from just 5 countries. Could you name any of those countries? Pop it in the chat. And Lorraine, if you could just read out any of that would be great.
Yeah, so we've got Sudan and Syria, Afghanistan, Ukraine, Afghanistan again.
Yeah, that's pretty good going. If any more come, you can say, but yeah, the one that nobody ever, Iran, yep, they're slightly further down the list, but yes, Iran is big. I think they might be 7th on this list. The one that nobody to this day, and I've been doing this training for quite a long time, has got is Venezuela. We don't tend to hear about South America as much because people tend to seek sanctuary north, in America or in surrounding countries in South America. Nobody tends to cross the Atlantic from Venezuela as much. And there's a lot of instability there. So yes, but closely followed behind by Syria, Ukraine, Afghanistan, and Sudan. And as I said, Sudan, yes, has 2.5 million refugees, but that doesn't count sort of all the internally displaced people in Sudan. I think it's actually currently the largest displacement conflict area in the world because so many people have been forced from their homes, but within Sudan. So these are just who the UN would recognise as refugees who've fled the border, and we are increasingly seeing lots of Sudanese people.
We got Pakistan on that list as well. I just wondered if that's beyond that 5.
Yes, I feel like Pakistan's actually a major hosting country. Yeah, no, I think the UK actually, one of the top 5 nationalities in the UK is Pakistan for people seeking asylum. But it falls quite down. I think it's within the top 15. But yeah, if you're interested, the UN have really helpful data finder stats on UNHCR's website if you want to go deeper, or I can send some links. Which country hosts the most refugees in the world? This changes. In fact, yeah, I delivered this a few months ago and it's changed since then. So the UK, Turkey, or Colombia? Pop your answer in the chat.
We've got 5 for Turkey and 1 for the UK.
Okay.
Another 1 for Turkey.
Yeah. Any for Colombia?
I'm just wondering, because you mentioned Venezuela, I'm wondering if it's Colombia.
It is. And this actually, it was Turkey, followed closely by Iran and then Colombia. But I mean, the US recently bombed Venezuela, didn't they? And I haven't done this training since then, so I can't help but wonder if Colombia now is receiving more refugees because more people are fleeing from Venezuela. So, these figures fluctuate all the time. I think the interesting one here too is Germany. 2.7 million. And when you see the UK's stat for how many we host, just within Europe, within European countries, if you could rank us per head of population for how many refugees we host, we rank 20th, just out of countries in Europe. So we do not host many by comparison. In fact, there we go. Yeah, 548,000 refugees currently in the UK, which is 0.66% of the UK population, including asylum seekers. This is quite data heavy. But yes, so we host 0.47% of the world's forcibly displaced, 1% of that 40 million refugees, and ranked 20th of the intake in the EU. So I'm not a huge mathematician and statistician. I like English. That's what I like to teach. But I do think some of these stats are really important because we can be really misled to think that we are being invaded and we are being overtaken sometimes. And actually, yes, there are people wanting to come here for sure who with valid reasons. But when you look at the data, it's just interesting. Oh yes, and the top, yes, whoever said Pakistan was right. The UK actually, out of all the countries that get hosted, we do host quite a lot of people from Pakistan who are seeking sanctuary. Okay, one more quiz for you. So think of the UK immigrant population. So that's everybody that's who's come here for work, for education, for family, including refugees and asylum seekers. What percentage of that immigrant population are asylum seekers and refugees? Pop your percentage in the chat. And then you can think about the next question once you've done that.
We've got one for 72 and one for 12. I'm going to say 12 as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we've got a few 12s.
Okay. If you said 12, you're right. Yeah, 12% of the immigrant population. So I don't know if that surprises you or not. I think, yeah, it depends on where you stand on this issue. But yeah, 12%. And next one, how many asylum seekers are currently in Bradford? So these are people without refugee status who are waiting from the Home Office to be granted. It does fluctuate, but it sort of goes within 100 either way. And it has been quite a steady figure for the last few years. Pop your answer in the chat.
So I think most people have said 1300 and
yes.
We've got 1650.
Okay, most people are right. It is around 1300. That figure does fluctuate, but it is around that. So there's people in temporary accommodation, including children, some in, housing, some in hotels. We have many schools that work with the hotels and work with the children there and pick them up and all sorts of things. But in terms of stats, so Bradford actually has a really long history of being a dispersal area since the 2000s. And it was the first city to take Rohingya refugees and then Syrian refugees. It's resettled that number of refugees. Top countries of origin for Bradford. So interesting, Pakistan's not on there. But Iraq and Iran, Afghanistan. Yes, and there's approximately 1,300 asylum seekers in Bradford and 500 in contingency. That's hotel accommodation. And I just wonder if you knew, there's so much around at the moment, asylum seekers having, being put up in hotel accommodation. But how much, if you weren't in hotel accommodation where you get your meals, do you think asylum seekers get a week? And this is to cover everything, your transport, your food, your clothes, your toiletries, everything. How much do you think people get a week?
I think everybody's said £49.80.
Yeah, you've gone for yes, it's that one, the lowest. Yeah. So £49 a week to everything, and that's fine until it's not fine, but a story last week, a family we were working with had to spend £50 on a train ticket to go to Liverpool to check in at the Home Office. The appointment was cancelled, and they had to be sent home again. So money goes so quickly, and some people, it's not just a couple of months they're in this situation for, it can be years. Because the next question I had for you was, can people seeking asylum work or claim benefits? Yes or a no?
No, it's all around.
Yeah, no. We're actually doing a City of Sanctuary, quite a big piece of work at the moment called Lift the Ban, which is about lifting the ban on people seeking asylum and the benefit it would bring to the economy, to people's mental health, and to help people feel like they can contribute to society. So look out for that because that's coming soon. Yeah, so I think this is just really interesting because it really makes you think, poverty was mentioned as a huge barrier and issue for pupils in school. And if you're in self-located accommodation, £49 a week. If you're in hotel accommodation, yes, you get your own meals, but we have all sorts of issues with the food that's served in hotels, often not being appropriate. But that's £9.95 per person per week for everything, except for food and accommodation. You do, if you're pregnant, get £3 extra a week, or if you're a child, you get £5 extra a week. So it's just to emphasize that the importance of schools helping with uniforms. We have schools we work with that run food banks that help with all sorts of things, because people are living in poverty and they cannot work. So, we talked about some of these challenges in this section. Not being many safe routes to the UK, delays in Home Office decision making, mental health, cost of living, limited legal aid, access to healthcare, issues with asylum, housing in hotels, and experiences in detention is a huge one, and that transience of can we stay, can't we stay. And there's a video that I wanted to show you on the BBC. It's one we show with Key Stage 4 children, sometimes Key Stage 3. I am thinking what I might do, it's 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes, is if I pop the link in the chat, I'm wondering if we mute ourselves and actually watch it on our browsers without me streaming it through my laptop, because I feel like that might be more glitchy. Does that sound, oops, how do I stop sharing? Does that sound okay? If I pop the link directly in the chat, because then I'd like your thoughts about it afterwards. If I pop that in there, can everybody see that? Can everybody click on it? And perhaps mute yourself and watch it. Maybe just give a thumbs up if that will work. It just emphasizes, without me speaking, everything that we've just been talking about. Does that
About
work?
4.5 minutes. Yeah, it does work. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, cool. Thanks for the thumbs ups. when you finished, just there's a question in the chat about what struck you most about the story. I'll give it about 30 more seconds, but I think I've timed 5 minutes, so most people will be finished. Okay, I think that's most people because I can see lots of comments in the chat. Thank you for putting that in there. The reason why I chose that video, there's a whole series of videos actually on those BBC Learning clips, and there's ones that are better for younger children as well. And they're all true stories. And that one in particular is just sadly, devastatingly, something we hear so frequently, time and time again, with children we work with in Bradford. And I think I mentioned, about the transience that children live with and families live with, and what that does to you. And those are the children who are in our classrooms and are in our schools. And don't we want so much our schools to be places of healing and welcome for them when you think about, children that have come from that kind of background. Yeah, students who are refugees and want to be lawyers and help more. I know there's so much they want to give back, isn't it? Yeah, ICE detention centres. Yeah. Thank you for those comments. Yeah, and uncertainty. I'm really aware. I'd love to have more face-to-face chat about this because I feel like it was it was a heavy video. But I'm also really aware that I want to respect your time this evening, and we've got 5 more minutes. So I'm just gonna pop back on to sharing the very last section of what we're going to be talking about, which is just how do you get involved with us more, and where are some of our resources? I think, yeah, I'll share that now. Let me share this from the current slide. Yeah, and keep going in the chat if you want. Because we were talking about, I'm going to zoom through this, the role schools have to play, particularly after seeing a video like that, is to create positive environments where pupils feel safe, to deliver developmentally appropriate teaching and learning to support these pupils, not just academically, but with social emotional skills. And we do so much signposting for schools who get in touch with us, and we link them with different services that we know in Bradford that can help to have a positive role in the lives of refugee families. We know some of the mums in particular, the school gate is often, or the ESOL class, the English class that they run at the community hub at the school, is one of the only places that they might feel safe or confident to go out with, particularly when their English is limited. But also, on the other side of things, the role schools have to play is to challenge racism and challenge stereotyping through teaching, and the curriculum is so important. And that's where we try to help with resources, and we've developed all sorts of resources trying to support teachers how to teach about forced migration, how to have courageous conversations about forced migration. If you're interested in any of those courses or materials, please get in touch with me. And yeah, to ensure all pupils and staff are aware of issues around forced migration, displacement, and refugees. I'm going to skip through this because this is one we would delve into a little bit more deeply if we had perhaps lots and lots of teachers and lots of time, but just thinking of ways that schools support students. And we see this, but we also suggest this to schools, particularly when we had Ukrainians arrive a few years ago. We found that some of those pupils ended up in schools who had never really had experience of pupils seeking sanctuary or even speakers of other languages. So the School of Sanctuary Award is for everybody, regardless of whether you have pupils seeking sanctuary in it or not. It's just as relevant, just as applicable to do the learning, as well as, the practical things of support, like you can see on the screen here. So last bit, because I have got 2 minutes. You can join us, you can join the network. I don't know if this PowerPoint will be sent around, but there is a link there. If you have not got the capacity to work towards the award, it doesn't fit within the school development plan for this year, we don't have the staffing, you can still join our network and email me and we can help with resourcing things. We can invite you to our events, our CPD, all those things. We're really passionate about the network, regardless of whether you've actually got the award. Once you've got the award, that's great too. But yeah, the more reach we have, the better. Check out our website. There's lots of different resources for teaching and learning, training, all kinds of things. If you do want to work towards the award, we can show you all the audit tools, the application, and then in short, you kind of make an action plan. I mean, I've got this all written out, it's very clear. You get involved in events, you work out how you're going to implement these things in school over the academic year, and then ultimately fill in and submit an application form. You get an assessment panel visit, and you receive an award at a lovely ceremony put on by us and the Access team at Bradford Council. And then the really important thing is just remaining in our network and sharing what you do. It's not like a rubber stamp, boom, we're done. It's, you're part of something then. And we want to continue to make it better, because in 3 years' time, you'll reaccredit and you'll renew. I was just going to plug this in the last minute because it's just gone out last week. If you want to be added to my mailing list, please let me know. Give me your email address, or follow us on Instagram or Facebook too. But we have got these things going on for Refugee Week for you to get involved with. These are also all on our website. In fact, if you had the PDF of this, it's all hyperlinked, so you can just click where I put underlined words and things. A day of welcome, we've got school's art exhibition, assemblies of Fraha, we've got some Ukraine assemblies going on, we've got workshops, film workshops, got staff training, we've got some really good Bradford 2025. They did this amazing project called Bradford Made Local Stories for Learners, digging into local histories, and there's several about migration, one about the Rohingya and another about food and migration. So yeah, we're delivering those, some fundraising resources and other things. So yeah, if you want to join our mailing list, very happy for you to have that. That is my email address. And it is 16:31. So I will stop sharing. Are there any questions?